Do you talk to yourself? I'm fairly certain I know the answer to that. It's my belief that almost everybody does that. You really can't shut your brain down, so there's almost always a conversation going. Um, I heard when I was growing up that it doesn't mean you're crazy if you talk to yourself, but if you start answering yourself, that might imply there's something wrong. So, Keith, what do you think? Well, I'll tell you what I think. What I think is it does not matter that you talk to yourself, it matters what you say to yourself. Here's an example. This morning I was doing something on my phone and I tried to open an app and it didn't open immediately. And it dawned on me, oh yeah, I have to click twice. And what I heard myself say to myself is one of those things that I'm trying to stop doing. What I said was, I always forget to click twice. Implied in that was there's something wrong with me. You can almost hear me saying, what an idiot. Well, that's not going to make me feel better about me or the day or life in general. It's one of those things that needs to change in our thinking in order to capture the secret of being content that Paul talks about. He says, think on these things and positive things. The negative stuff, we need to get out of the way and stop including in our thoughts. Two men who've written extensively and a host of others talk about how important our thoughts are to our feelings. What we think will impact what we feel. Dr. Burns talks about cognitive dissonances, twisted thinking. He has 10 of those. Dr. Amen talks about ants, automatic negative thoughts, and he lists 9. They're saying about the same thing. We're going to spend 7 days talking about those things and how they impact life and maybe some ways to get some of those out of our lives. And then we'll spend the next 7 days talking about some pets, some positive thoughts to include in our lives. So, Ant 1, automatic negative thought 1, Dr. Amen uh, calls it always or never. Dr. Burns calls it overgeneralization. I labeled it as absolute statements because that's what it is. It's making an absolute statement, and we should never say never, and we should always avoid saying always. So I made an absolute statement to say don't make absolute statements. Those are almost never true. She always yells at me. He never listens. I never get it right. I'm always messing up. The reality is, sometimes those things happen and sometimes those are true, but not always, not never. And when we tell ourselves what's not quite true, we start to believe it and we start to have the feelings that go with that. If I always forget, it means, well, I don't have much of a brain left and I'm getting a little senile. And then I start feeling bad about myself because I'm losing it. Well, the reality is, everybody forgets some things. Devices are all different, apps are different. It's not a big deal. It matters what we say to ourselves. Proverbs 4 and verse 23. Long ago, Solomon wrote, above all else, guard your heart, protect your heart, for everything you do flows from it. One translation says, your heart is the wellspring of life, it's the water source. And it's very important to protect that source and keep it clean so the rest of life is safe and healthy. In the same way, our heart, our thoughts flow out into everything else, into our mood, our feelings, but they also flow into our relationships and how we interact with others. So it's terribly important to guard our hearts. And one way to guard our hearts is to keep those negative things out, those absolute statements, for example. So here's what I'd ask you to do today. As you go through your day, listen to yourself and monitor your internal conversation. Nobody else can do that for you. You're the only one hearing that. But listen for words like always or never, or just any kind of absolute statement. Life is awful. Well, sometimes parts of it are, but not life as a totality. So listen to yourself. You may want to recruit somebody in your home or at work to help monitor your external, your actual verbal conversation, so that you can get in the habit of catching those statements and changing those. Maybe what I should have said to myself this morning was, oops, I forgot again. It's a good thing that doesn't happen all the time. You get the idea. Change the conversation, change the thoughts, and you change your feelings, change your thinking, and you change your life.